Buen día, alumnos. Hoy hablamos de una palabrita en español que se encuentra por todos lados. Lo. Now, this word seems pretty simple when you first learn it, but it gets even more complicated as you learn more about it, since it's just got a ton of different uses, like these ones on the screen right now. So today, we're going to break down how and when to use this word, not just in its more basic uses, but also in some handy phrases to take your Spanish to the next level. So let's start with the most common use for lo, which is as a direct object pronoun. Now, this is when we use it to talk about a person or thing that's affected directly by an action. Now, notice I said action, meaning you'll only find this usage when it's accompanied by a verb. Now, I've discussed object pronouns in depth in my video in the link up top, but for the purpose of this video, we're focusing only on lo. Lo is the masculine version of the direct object pronoun, meaning we only use it when we're describing males or masculine nouns. When we're describing people, we use it only for él or usted. So, for example, if I say lo conocí hace un año, that can translate either as I met him a year ago or I met you a year ago, but only when we want to address you more respectfully as usted. Now, when it comes to things, it's used only for masculine nouns to say it. So let's say I bought a car a year ago. Because the Spanish word for car is masculine, I can say compré mi carro hace un año, but if we already know I'm talking about the car, I could just say lo compré hace un año. And that translates as I bought it a year ago, referring to the car. That way we don't have to name it again unnecessarily. However, lo doesn't only have to apply to specifically masculine things. Maybe there are certain actions or situations that we want to describe as it in our sentence, and we'll use lo for that. So let's say you've just been given a serious task by your boss, and you want them to know that you're going to handle it. Well, you can say me lo encargo. And in this case, lo means it, but it's not describing a specifically gendered noun. In these cases, lo is used as what's called a neuter article. So what is a neuter article? Well, we know that in Spanish, nouns and adjectives take on either masculine forms with el or feminine forms with la. But the neuter article is non-gendered, so it can be used with either form. Now, that may seem a bit confusing, but we can think of the neuter article as something we use when we're describing something that isn't specific, that we can assign a specific gender to, but rather something more abstract, like a situation or an idea. Now, when it comes to the abstract ideas and the neuter article, there's a hugely important usage that we're going to group together, which we can refer to as the thing. No, not that thing. No, not that thing either. Just the thing. When we place lo in front of certain words, the best translation we can assign to it is the thing. So let's start with one which I'm sure you'll be using all the time, which is lo que. Now, if you've seen any of my immersion exercises, you already know it means what. Not what like when we're asking a question, which is que, but instead it's used for when we're providing information. And it's always going to be followed by a verb in some form. So we can think of it as the thing that, or the thing which, or that which, but really we're just saying what. They all mean the same thing here. So for example, if someone asks, ¿Qué quieres almorzar? We can respond and say, lo que quiero es una pizza. Or maybe we've got some chisme we want to share with our friends. We can ask them, ¿Has oído de lo que pasó ayer? Because we're introducing information when we talk about what happened yesterday. But then our friend can respond to us and say, No, ¿qué pasó? Because they're asking for information that they don't already have. Easy enough, right? Okay, so now I need to take a quick detour from the thing to talk about a use for lo, which is very similar to lo que, and that's lo cual. Now, this is used to say which and is like lo que in that it's only providing information, not asking for it. Again, because it's a neuter article, it's not going to refer to specific nouns, but rather more abstract things like situations or ideas. If we want to translate which to refer back to a specific gendered noun, we can use el cual for masculine nouns, la cual for feminine nouns, or simply que for either type. But when it comes to lo, on the other hand, we're most often using this to add extra context to a sentence by introducing more information about some sort of a situation. So, for example, I could say, mi mejor amigo no vino a mi fiesta, lo cual me molestó, which means my best friend didn't come to my party, which bothered me. So, even though it's not an example of lo translating as the thing, it's so similar to lo que that we need to be aware of the difference between the two. While lo que can mean the thing which, lo cual only means which. So with that out of the way, let's get back to looking at lo as the thing. Now, lo de is most often going to mean the thing about or the thing from. So let's say, for example, we see our friends after something crazy that happened the day before. We might say something like, platiquemos de lo de ayer, to say, let's chat about the thing from yesterday. But there's also two other uses for lo de, which you need to know so you don't get confused. And those are to talk about people's stuff and their homes. These different uses are made clear to the listener only when we provide proper context. So for example, lo de Manuel could mean the thing about Manuel, Manuel's stuff, or Manuel's place. It will only be context that makes it clear. So for example, te contaron lo de Manuel means, did they tell you the thing about Manuel? Whereas te tengo lo de Manuel means, I've got Manuel's stuff for you. And ayer fui a lo de Manuel means, yesterday I went to Manuel's place. So we just used the same two words to talk about somebody's situation, their belongings, and their home. And that's why context is so important in Spanish. So when you see lo de out there in the world, ask yourself which of those three options makes the most sense for what the speaker is telling you. Okay, so now for another big one, we can put lo in front of any adjective, and it's going to mean the adjective thing. So lo bueno is the good thing, and lo malo is the bad thing. Now we can use this construction with any adjective, but I'll go ahead and throw up a list of some of the most common ones you found in conversations. So you can pause here if you want to review. Now there are plenty of adjectives in Spanish which keep the same form with both genders. So we won't need to worry about those ones. But for all those adjectives which do change gender, we need to make sure that we always use the adjective in its masculine form when we want to say the adjective thing. So we can never say something like lo buena or lo mala in these cases. Now there are going to be three cases when we can use lo with a feminine adjective, but if we're talking about a masculine adjective, it'll work just the same here. That said, for this next section, I'm going to stick with just feminine examples just to help us remember a little bit easier. The first way, which we can call a placeholder lo, is when it ties back to a specific noun or adjective that's mentioned somewhere earlier in the conversation. And we'll use it with one of our to-be verbs, either ser or estar. In these cases, we use it for things like affirming or denying certain descriptions. The best way you can think of it is like saying, yes, she is, or no, she isn't. Although those might be complete sentences in English, in Spanish, it's incorrect to merely say, sí es, or no, no es. These statements are missing crucial information, and that's where lo comes in, placed directly in front of the verb. So for example, if you're running late to a party because your friend told you she was ready when really she still needed more time, you can say, me dijiste que estabas lista, pero no lo estabas. So here the lo refers to lista. And if we leave it out, the listener won't know that we're referring back to that adjective. Or let's say somebody asks, tu prima es abogada, ¿verdad? To ask if our cousin is a lawyer. We can respond and either say, sí, lo es, or no, no lo es. And we have to include that lo to indicate that we're referring back to the noun or adjective that was already mentioned. Now, of course, we could repeat the word when we're answering the question to say, sí es abogada, or no, no es abogada. Now, if we decide we want to repeat the original word, that placeholder lo goes away. Okay, so our next usage, which we can call the emphatic lo, puts lo directly in front of the adjective. And we use it to emphasize how much of a degree a certain adjective is. So, for example, if we're eating something that's just so freaking tasty, but our friend doesn't want to try it, we can say something like, tú no sabes lo buena que está esta comida, which means you don't know how good this food is. Now, just like some of our other uses from earlier, we only use this to mean how when we're providing information instead of asking for it. If we want to ask how much of a certain characteristic something is, we use the word cuan for that. And the last way that we can use lo with feminine adjectives is when we want to say that something is enough of a certain adjective. In this case, we're going to use a fixed phrase, which is lo suficientemente adjective. And if we want to say it's enough for something or someone, we'll add para right after. So let's say you're out with your partner shopping for a new bed that you want to buy, but you both like to sprawl out in your sleep. So it needs to be wide enough for the both of you. Once you find one that works, you can say, esta cama es lo suficientemente ancha, to say this bed is wide enough. And if you want to finish that thought to say, for us, you immediately follow it with para nosotros. And of course, we can use it to ask questions too. Like if you order your food extra spicy in a restaurant, your server might come up and ask, ¿La comida está lo suficientemente picosa para usted? Which means, is the food spicy enough for you? All right, so those are all the more basic and common uses for lo, which you'll be using all the time. But before we move on, I do want to give you a chance just to do a quick recap. So you can pause your screen now if you want to review everything we just discussed. Ready to move on? Let's kick it up a notch and look at some phrases with lo that we can sprinkle into our conversations to massively level up our Spanish game. Now, although these phrases might not always make sense if we try to translate them directly into English, I find it does help if you try to remember what the direct translation means. So, just to help tie our understanding together, I'll put those up on screen as we go through these examples. Now, I'm going to go through these pretty quick, so let's lock in. A lo mejor is going to mean maybe or perhaps. Like when we say, a lo mejor hará sol mañana, meaning maybe it'll be sunny tomorrow. Por lo visto means apparently, like in, por lo visto ella perdió los boletos, which means apparently she lost the tickets. Por lo tanto means therefore, so, thus, or hence, and is used the same way as así que, but is considered more formal. An example is when we say, no gano mucho en mi trabajo, por lo tanto necesito buscar otro, which means I don't earn much at my job, so I need to look for another one. Por lo general means generally, like with por lo general me lleva 15 minutos llegar al trabajo por la mañana. Translating to, generally it takes me 15 minutes to arrive to work in the morning. Por lo menos means at least, like with creo que gasté por lo menos $300 por este librero, which means I think I spent $300 at least for this bookshelf. A lo largo de means throughout, along, or over, like when we say, a lo largo de tiempo voy mejorando mi español, which gives us, over time, I'm improving my Spanish. A lo lejos means in the distance or far away, like with lo veo a lo lejos, which means I see him in the distance. Now don't forget, it can also mean I see you or I see it. And our last one that I'll share with you for now is por lo pronto, which has two uses. The first means for now or for the time being. to talk about points in time. Like when we say, necesito guardar mi carro aquí por lo pronto, to say, I need to keep my car here for now. And the second use for por lo pronto means for a start or for one thing, used for introducing ideas or arguments, such as when we say, pues por lo pronto no estoy de acuerdo, to say, well, for one thing, I don't agree. Man, that is a lot of phrases to have to learn in just a few minutes. If only we could screenshot all of them at once to have them handy for later. Oh wait, we can. Okay, alumnos, so that's everything we've got for the lesson. So now it's time we get started with our practice round. I think our best way to test our understanding here is going to be pretty simple today. Multiple choice. I'm going to give you some sentences in English, then translate them into Spanish with our lo phrases left out. You just need to decide which option best fits our translation. Like always, if you need to pause and jump around the video before deciding, hazlo. So let's get to it. All right, so our first sentence is, it's incredible how big that house is. Our translation is, es increíble, grande que es esa casa. All right, so what's the best translation here? Is it A, lo que, B, lo de, C, lo, or D, por lo menos? All right, you're up. Our correct answer is C, lo. We're using the emphatic lo to emphasize the extent to which the house is big. So we just put lo right in front of our adjective grande. Remember, we can use feminine adjectives like bonita with this sort of usage too. Okay, so our next sentence is, my great-grandmother passed away a week ago. So tomorrow, we're going to pick up her stuff. Our translation is, mi bisabuela falleció hace una semana. Así que mañana vamos a recoger ella. So what's our best translation? Is it A, lo de, B, lo suficientemente, C, lo cual, or D, por lo tanto? Okay, te toca a ti. The answer is lo de. Lo de could also translate to say the thing about my great-grandma or her home, but the context here tells us that we're describing her stuff. Okay, did you get those two right? Let's go for a few more. I lost my sunglasses, so I have to buy a new pair. Our translation is, perdí mis gafas de sol. Tengo que comprar un par nuevo. Which option best completes the translation? Is it A, lo suficientemente, B, por lo tanto, C, por lo menos, or D, lo que? It's B, por lo tanto. Remember, this can mean therefore as well as so, and it works in the same way as the phrase así que, but it's just a bit more formal. Okay, let's do a couple more. Next up, we've got what I liked most about Mexico was the food. The unfinished translation is, más me gustó de México fue la comida. Are we gonna pick A, lo que, B, lo cual, C, lo de, or D, a lo mejor? It's A, lo que. We're talking about what we like, but we're providing information instead of asking for it. So we use lo que. And don't forget, this is always going to come right before a verb, which in this case is me gustó. Okay, guys, how are we doing so far? Are we ready for the last one? My best friend is a great man. I really love him. Our translation is, mi mejor amigo es un gran hombre. Amo de verdad. So is our best translation going to be A, a lo mejor, B, lo que, C, a lo lejos, or D, lo? All right, last one, make it count. Our final answer is D, lo. This is our usage of lo as a direct object, which means you could use it to say it, him or you, but here it translates to him. All right, guys, so how'd you do? Let us know down in the comments. If you got all the answers right, es increíble lo inteligente que eres. Now, if you missed any of the answers, no te preocupes. Lo importante es intentar. Just keep practicing, and very soon, lo and behold, you'll be using this perfectly in every conversation. Ok, hermanos y hermanas, ya se acabó la clase de hoy. Espero que te haya gustado y que hayas aprendido algo útil hoy. Déjame un comentario si tienes alguna pregunta acerca del tema de hoy y te atenderé. Muchísimas gracias por ver. Nos vemos en el próximo video. Chao.